And the recording's going to be available on the Lair's YouTube channel. So if you want to share it with other people, we'll link to that later and you can view it later. Let's see, we're going to mute everybody while Becky's talking, but at the end we'll unmute. So feel free to ask her questions, and you can also write questions in the chat. And a quick reminder, we have more women's wellness programs that are open to all that are coming up. We have on tomorrow at 5 p.m. our favorite swim instructor, Laura Zavikian, is doing a dry land workout. She's a kick. It'll be a lot of fun. We have a yoga for all class on Saturday morning at 9 a.m. followed at 10 o'clock for a 30-minute Pete's coffee tasting, which we'll be doing from the dining hall, but it's a Zoom class or a Zoom program. And on Friday night, we're doing a Zoom wine tasting and mixer. And this is hosted by John Thiel, who's the owner and executive chef of Papo, and also the Lair's executive chef. And that's at 5 o'clock. And we'll be on the lodge, the Camp Blue Lodge deck for that. So you don't have to have purchased the wine in advance, although it's still not too late if you wanted to. And John's going to share his knowledge of wine with us. And after the tasting, we'll do an informal mixer with everybody. So sign up if you haven't yet. If you know friends, help us spread the word. Everyone's welcome. And if you want more information, feel free to message me in the chat or send us an email. All right, so now I want to introduce Becky Jaffe. Becky's been our women's wellness photography lead for many years, and many of you know her already, so she's actually hard to introduce because there's so many great things to say about Becky. She always teaches us amazing new photography skills, but also how to be more creative and have fun experimenting with our cameras, even for those of us with an iPhone as our camera. So you can learn more about Becky and her work at beckyjaffephotography.com. I'll put that link in the chat, and I will now turn the evening over to Becky.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. I am so delighted to see all of your beautiful faces here from so many parts of my life. Students, mentors, teachers, friends, family. Oh my gosh, you guys, here we are, united. How wonderful. It's a delight for me. I love the Lair. I got connected through the Lair of the Bear through Nancy Rubin, who I'm very happy is here tonight with the Lair as her background. Hi, Nancy. And she graciously invited me, I don't even know how many years ago now, to be a speaker and a workshop teacher of photography at the Lair. And she connected me with Kathy Connolly, who is our host tonight, along with Carol. And it's been a wonderful thing. Welcome, Eli. Welcome, Sally. I love the Lair. It's a beloved place. It's the place where I get to teach photography by the creek and watch dragonflies molt. It's a place where I get to be with people who are intelligent and humble and interesting and fun. And they're in nature, kayaking and watching the ospreys, and it's a really beloved place. And this year is unusual. Let us be clear. I'm sure you've noticed. Has anyone noticed? Little unusual. We are not gathered around the campfire, and we are not donning wigs to become disco bingo rock stars this time, surprisingly, although I invite you to do so during this talk, even if you should feel so inspired. There we go, John. Prepared for any moment. So we're adapting. We're on Zoom tonight together, and it's wonderful that we're able to adapt. And really what I'm here to do tonight is to give you a pep talk. I think we can all use a pep talk, yes? Can anyone use a pep talk? Yeah. Is anyone spending a lot of your time these days giving pep talks to yourself or each other all day long? Yes, okay. So buckle in, people. This is an enthusiastic pep talk. Okay. I am going to, actually, before I share my screen, I want to ask you guys a question. How many of you have leaned into an art practice while you're sheltering in place? Okay, good. That's really what I'm talking about tonight, is how we can lean into our art practices, whatever those may be, how we can deepen them and use them as a tool for resilience. So I'm going to share my screen with you. and start showing you some of what I've been doing and thinking about in terms of my own art practice during this time. And I'm going to encourage you relentlessly. Okay. So the reason we use this image as an opening is because you can see this rhizome here, ginger root, is a desiccated, dry, a ravaged landscape, right? Much like our charred chaparral that is getting burned right now. And out of that desiccated landscape does come new life. We know this, although we sometimes need to be reminded of the freshness that comes after what appears to be catastrophe. So I'm talking about resilience, which is innate to us as creatures on an innately resilient earth. And I'm talking about artistry, the practice of art making as a way to tune into our own innate resilience. So I took this photo. I was in New Zealand. I have the pleasure of getting to be a lecturer for Cal Discoveries Travel, and they've sent me to places like Japan, which have been a dream come true for me, and recently to Australia and New Zealand. So I could feel, you know, as I was there, really having an amazing time getting to lecture and learn there. I was in a garden there and I could feel the weight of the pandemic encroaching. And I took this photo, you know, to express that. Can anyone relate to this, feeling like they have the weight of the world on their back right now? Mm-hmm. I mean, I think we can all relate except for the musculature on this guy. You know, he has not gained his COVID-19 yet, but other than that, we can relate, right? So, and I created this multiple exposure as I was sort of coming to terms, trying to get on a flight home and coming to terms with the fact that we were all of us about to navigate uncharted terrain, which we didn't know how to navigate. This was our first global pandemic and we didn't know what to do. We didn't have an instruction manual, and we might feel like this small figure holding on to the people we love or what we love, and trying to navigate sort of an Escher-esque terrain. This is us now, a self-portrait of all of us, you know, sheltering in place and trying to figure out what to do with ourselves and how to thrive in that context. And what I'm going to argue tonight is that art is the way to thrive. So I'm going to lay out an argument not only about why we need to thrive, but how to thrive. And so the first thing is that when we are in times of hardship, as we are now, layers of hardship, art is the way we explore our curiosity. So, you know, you might feel right now like you are the tiniest doll at the center of a set of Russian Matryoshka dolls. You're the tiny figure, and there are layers of trouble that you're surrounded by. You've got the pandemic, you have the twin pandemic of racism, you have the fires, you have whatever personal losses you're going through in your life, which are hefty, no doubt. I know several of you and what you're dealing with. You know, floods in the base room. You know, we've lost more people currently, you know, 2.5 times the people who died in Vietnam. We're going through collective grief. So how do we cope? One way is to lean into our curiosity. As graduates of UC Berkeley, you know, that's some of us here are graduates of UC Berkeley, which is how we're connected to the layer of the bear. We know how to lean into our curiosity as a way to navigate life. So this is a self-portrait of me. I am deeply curious. It's perhaps my greatest strength is my curiosity. And I want you to each know your strengths artistically so that you can leverage them. As artists, we are deeply curious about looking. We use looking, right, as a kind of pleasure. There is a pleasure in looking, and we're somewhat obsessed with optical things, microscopes, you know, telescopes. We want to look at the large and the small, all of it, you know, whether it's the microbiological sphere or the astronomical sphere. We have deep curiosity. And we also want to know what happens if we bring our cameras underwater. Right? This is a photograph from the Great Barrier Reef where I took my camera underwater because there is no place we will not go with our curiosity. It is a pathway, and we can use our curiosity to turn it on ourselves. This is a wooden camera that I built while we were sheltering in place for fun to indulge my curiosity, and also a 3-dimensional translucent rendition of Rodin's The Thinker that I got from Japan that I had to assemble. And then I positioned him on here. And I think this is my way of using my own curiosity to study the human condition and myself, to think about thinking, right? It's sort of a metacognitive view. we want to be curious about our own condition as we proceed and navigate these levels of hardship. And I often, as many of you know who know me, I bring my curiosity to the biological world. And I have a deep curiosity about the nature of nature. And so here's a photograph I took on my light table, and I'll be talking more about light tables soon, of a native species, pipevine swallowtail. And my curiosity for them is endless, and I can go down this rabbit hole and lose hours and be endlessly rewarded for my curiosity. Here is the pipevine swallowtail forming its chrysalis here, and there it is in this incredible sculptural phase, which, you know, if I have any doubt about whether or not I am excited by existence, this will remind me, yes, you are excited by the existence of existence itself. Many of you have seen that, you know, I like to track the life cycle, and I think that this is both studying nature itself and also studying our own nature, right? We are in a transformative moment. Can we rise to that moment, right? Do we have this transformative capacity that is embedded in other species? Can we see that in ourselves? Could we see this time not as sheltering in place, but cocooning in place? And not so much as being alone as we are sheltering in place. I know a lot of us are living alone and trying to figure out how to be alone, but we're never alone. We know how to connect with nature through our art practice. We are surrounded by billions of species on the planet, and human company is not the only savory company to be had, right? So we can connect with the biosphere at large through our art practice and through our careful noticing. I have tried to, as a teacher, pass my curiosity down to my students. I have been lucky to have a lot of students who are also my teachers. And I have a young student I've worked with since she was 12, Sasha, and she, during the time of the pandemic, her senior year was stopped short by the pandemic. What a rough senior year, really. A hard way to graduate after all the time and effort she put in. And she had to make the decision of what college she was going to go to during this time and how to make this transition into adulthood, which is a tough thing to do at this time. I feel for her. And as her teacher, I have tried to offer her metaphors and ways that she might see herself as in a process of transformation. I am happy to tell you, she is a first-year UC Berkeley student now, yes. She decided she had to choose between Wesleyan and UC Berkeley, and I am personally thrilled that she chose UC Berkeley. So I gave her the gift that teachers give their students, which is curiosity, and I gave her that in the form of the GPS coordinates of a stand of anise, which grows wild on the street. And I asked her to poke her head into the anise and to find eggs, and I gave her a visual ID for that, and to bring us home a little spot of fennel. And then she made this video.
When you had to bid adieu, said you'd never love anew. I wondered if I could hold it and fall in love with it too. You told me to buy a pony, but all I wanted was you.
So that's obviously her, you know, transforming and taking flight and transitioning from youth to adulthood and taking on the next phase with some spirit and enthusiasm. And that is the gift we have to give to our students, is that faith that they will fly to the highest branch gracefully. Whoops. Okay. So, you know, you could consider this a way to explore your curiosity and your own capacity for transformation and rising to this moment. You could consider it as cocooning in place or nesting in place. See what that does for you as a reframe. Now, in terms of nesting in place, the UC Botanical Garden, which is beloved to me, is now open. Cindy Plambeck is here with us tonight. She has been a docent there for 16 years and has worked tirelessly to create a robust curriculum to use the garden, its glorious 34 acres, to teach students of all ages. Thank you, Cindy. And you can now book an appointment there and have 2 hours to yourself in heaven. And we need this. This garden is restorative. So please book an appointment for yourself. And bring your curiosity with you. Seeley Plasek, you know, a remarkable person. I have the joy of teaching a class right now at the UC Botanical Garden. I just finished up a class and a couple of you attended. And I asked you guys, Seeley was one of the people who attended, and what she did was, during this time when people are genuinely suffering, and she is as well, she has her reasons to suffer, but during this time, she brought a plant into her closet and took a UV light and looked at what different plants look like under UV light, because she has that level of curiosity to bring to bear as a strategy for coping with the darkness we're dealing with. I find that inspiring. And I see that learning itself, when we really pursue our curiosity, learning itself is a way to thrive. And I want to read you this quote by T.H. White, which I see as a sort of mission statement for myself as a lifelong learner. And I think many of you may relate. "The best thing for being sad," replied Merlin, beginning to puff and blow, "is to learn something new. That is the only thing that never fails. You may grow old and trembling in your anatomies. You may lie awake at night, listening to the disorder of your veins. You may miss your only love. You may see the world about you devastated by evil lunatics, or know your honor trampled in the sewers of baser minds. There is only one thing for it then, to learn. Learn why the world wags and what wags it. That is the only thing which the mind can never exhaust, never alienate, never be tortured by, never fear or distrust, and never dream of regretting. Learning is the thing for you. Look what a lot of things there are to learn." Of course, as graduates of UC Berkeley, we went there because we have a lust for learning. And that will see us through, not just to get the status or the prestige or the degree or the money, but the lifelong path of learning. I have been learning a lot during this time, actively, proactively. I learned how to use new apps on my phone, like PhotoGrid. You might want to, if you see anything here that's fun, take it up as a chance to learn something new. I learned how to use portrait mode on my camera, a fussy beast, but worth it. You can get some striking images on portrait mode. Here is Susan Aber, who is with us tonight. And Susan, I took this photo of you at the UC Botanical Garden. I thought you looked beautiful, glowing with the light. And I really want to thank you for the work you're doing. You know, you have created this group on Facebook, Art is Life, which has 1,700 members now. And every day you bombard us with optimism and joy and creativity. And you show us art from all around the world that just puts a smile on my face. So thank you for contributing to the art that's online and adding some positivity there. And those of you who are not yet part of her group, you may want to join Susan's group. The Prisma app is a way to learn something new, something to play with here. The Tiny Planet app, you can rotate and swirl your images. Superimpose X app for you photographers here. Here are some options for you for digital collage. And of course, we're the kind of people who love to go to museums, and we can do that from home now. We can not only go to the SF MoMA digitally, but we can go to museums in South Korea. We can go to museums all over the world and see tours that are especially tailored for virtual visits. We can join the live stream of the NASA International Space Station and see the Earth live streaming right now. Our ancestors could not do that, and we should not take that for granted. We should tune in just for their sake. There's a powerful exhibit right now by Dawood Bay at the SF MoMA, an American project. Please do take a look at it. It's apropos of our present moment. You know, we're the kind of people who watch documentaries for fun. So dig in, you know, let's look at, you know, a major figure in photography history, Gordon Parks, about whom there is a biopic. This is like a box of truffles for us, delicious. Take a look at people, artists who are talking about racism and how we can change, how we can transform. Angelica Das has this powerful TED Talk I encourage you to look at. I got a chance to see this live. Titus Kaphar is a big, I hugely admire him. I got a chance to see this up in Vancouver as he was delivering this talk. This is a potent talk about the problem when we teach art history, it being so white-centric, and he does a visual demonstration on what it would look like to put Black people at the center of art history, in the center of their own narrative storytelling, in the center of their own art making. So I heartily encourage you to take a look at this. And because we love learning, we're able. And art also is how we do what? Can you all read this? You can unmute yourself if you can read this and tell me what it says. It's a visual puzzle for you.
Play.
Yes, art is how we play, right? I made this early in the sheltering in place when I needed to play. We need to play. Biologists believe that play is a sign of intelligence. So when we look at other species to try to figure out how intelligent they are, we look at how much they play, right? We are a very playful species, and art is how we play. We're the kind of people who love to go to a car wash and just giggle our way through it. That's the cheapest thrill in town. You know, the part of being an artist means you have permission to be a little bit childlike in that sense of having renewed joy by the smallest things, right? I love a car wash. It's tempting to go through twice, except for the environmental concerns. You know, crank up Disco Inferno and giggle yourself silly for 15 minutes. You know, you can press reset on your attitude through a car wash. The thing about art and the reason why it helps us restore us is that it helps us with the nonlinear path. We are often on the linear path, especially if we have responsibilities, as many of you do. If you're caring for children or other people, if you have community responsibilities, it's exhausting to do on the to-do list all day long. So art is where we get to go in that nonlinear space and let our minds meander and wander. This is called the straight and narrow path, ironically. I asked my students, I've been teaching a lot since I got back. Fortunately, I've been in that lucky position of teaching a lot of art classes, and I asked my students to photograph toilet paper specifically. And here's what they did with it. Just to give you an example of how playful artists can be. Michael Dawson he dug a grave for his toilet rolls, and I'm sure his neighbors got a kick out of watching him do this and wondering, what on earth could he be up to here? David Edgar, who's the president of the Berkeley Camera Club, he turned toilet paper into a miniature Stonehenge, right? That's the kind of imagination and playfulness that artists have access to that makes what really could feel like an ongoing catastrophe feel actually like an opportunity for imaginative play. Deborah Lichtman took toilet paper. It turns out I did not know that there was such a difference between 2-ply and you can see here, this diaphanous 1-ply, right? So showing us sort of that classical view that even something that we take for granted, like toilet paper, can be beautiful when churned through the spirit of an artist. This is a geologist, Wayne Narr, and he noticed that when you squeeze tissue paper, you can get the same crenulated cleavage that you get in geological formations. So the two images on the left and the right bookending this image are rock formations, and the one in the middle is toilet paper. And my God, that kind of imagination, you know, I don't want to put any pressure on you people, but I will note that Isaac Newton invented calculus during a plague, you know, and, you know, the Canterbury Tales, Chaucer wrote the Canterbury Tales right after a plague and referenced that, and it was part of the art form. I'm not saying you have to do anything that grand. I'm just saying that they probably did that for themselves, for their own selves to be creative, and then the world got to benefit from that. So if you find yourself and your curiosity, you know, sort of itching, tugging at you, you know, let it free in this way. I couldn't believe the playfulness that my students brought to bear in these beautiful images. Who could think that 1-ply toilet paper, which we genuinely hate, nobody likes 1-ply toilet paper. It's a terrible thing. It's a curse. It's what you find at like truck stop bathrooms, right? It's miserable. But somehow she turned that into something diaphanous and beautiful, because that's what she's bringing to anything. Celie Plassic, again, you know, she's hilarious. She really sums up the artistic process for me. Step 1, she took a Webster's dictionary and she soaked it in a bucket of water in her backyard. She did not know where that was going. That's a classic artist for you. Let me start by just soaking my Merriam-Webster dictionary in a bucket of water and then see where that goes, right? So step 2, the next day, she unwraps it. she lays it out on her yard, on her grass, and lets it dry, and it takes on these wonky forms, organic shapes. And then she does a double exposure with the flowers in her garden, because that's how you thrive when you have to shelter in place. So if you find yourself not knowing what to do with yourselves while you're sheltering in place, just take your Merriam-Webster dictionary and put it in a bucket of water and see what happens next. Diane Rice took toilet paper and put it on her light table, and she made it look like Antelope Canyon. You know, artists are able to take nothing and turn it into something by the power of our attention. And that is possible for any of us. You don't have to be, you know, brilliant. You don't have to be a genius. You just have to be willing to play and to schedule time for yourself to play. Look at these images. Good God. And ultimately, when we play, you know, whatever art medium we're playing in, we fall in love with light, which is one of the great gifts of art making. We love photons, especially photographers. Photons become sources of scientific interest, both their particle nature and wave nature, but also playthings, toys. We can be delighted, emphasis on light, just by watching light flicker across a curtain, right? We have that in common with the plant world. We know how to take light in and turn it into nectar, just like plants do, right? We turn it into visual sweetness, and we give ourselves the sweetness we need with that light. We become thirsty for light, hungry for light in the way that plants are. This is from the UC Botanical Garden. You know, we find a way to live through a relationship with light and sun, which is, of course, the source of all energy in our solar system. We even, in some sense, are in apprenticeship to the sun. And so that's, in that sense, it doesn't matter if we're sheltering in place, as long as we have access to dappled light. One thing that photographers need while we're sheltering in place is a light panel. You can get this at the Looking Glass in Berkeley, and the light panel has been really helpful for me and for a lot of photographers who are sheltering in place. Imagine a 13 by 19 pane of light. Yes, we need this while we're sheltering in place. This is how, again, we can play, explore, learn. I teach 10, 12 hours a day online, which I love to do. It's a gift to me to be able to do that. And I have a couple of hours to myself at night, and I bust out the light table and I play, and I'm free. It's my time to just explore and be happy and renew my own sense of joy, which I do every night. And the light table has been a great source of joy. Here I'm showing how flowers transform to fruits. You can see the swollen ovary that is a fruit ripening here. But it's a trick, right? I've laid these out on my table, which is flat, and then I have made it look as though it's falling, which it is not. So it's sort of an optical illusion. And I can explore all manner of things I'm interested in, even the internal organs of a leaf insect. And I get to play. You know, I can make up things that don't exist, that are just for my imagination, that are sentimental. This owl butterfly moth has sentimental meaning to me, and I get to weave it into my own imaginative story. One thing I noticed that I like to play with is glass. This is Filoli Botanical Garden, which I miss very much. This is the bathroom. I noticed when I was in the bathroom that if I held my mobile phone up inside the bathroom, I could get a beautiful impressionistic view of the garden. So I've started to play with glass a lot and related, you know, making double exposures. This is the New Zealand Botanical Garden. And I've been able to bring that indoors using my light table. So what this is some basil laid down on my light table and then some textured glass. Now, early on in the pandemic, I purchased some textured glass, and I want to encourage you all to do that. So I bought a box of different kinds of textured glass. You can see that they're dimpled. Some of them are wavy. Some of them have different shapes on them. And when you press them onto things, you can create all kinds of fun imagery. So like this, right? This is glycerin, oil, water, food coloring, glasses. This is just fun at night on my light table, like throwing some things together and seeing what fun arises, playing with light and color and form. It's not something I usually do. I'm not even sure I like it, and I don't care. What I care is that I gave myself the permission to play, and I give you all the permission to play. In fact, I encourage you to set up some stations around your house. I have 12 stations. Each of them is a chair and a place where I make art. In one place, I crochet. In another place, I etch. In another place, I play with the light table. In another place, I do puzzles. In other words, I have playstations all around my house. And when I sit there, I let myself do nothing but play. I don't do work there. I don't do anything serious there. So consider whether you want to set up your home with playstations for things that reliably bring you joy. This was last year during the fire season. I was distressed by the fires, as I imagine we all are. And so I broke out the emergency tulips and some dimpled glass, and I cheered myself up. You know, this is an internal job here. Same idea. I'm letting myself play in any way I want, including some ways that are a little bit geeky. I like to build things, scale models, and I'm letting myself do that. So if there is something that brings you joy, and even if nobody else gets it or appreciates it or relates to it, let yourself do it. Harley, you might get some blame/credit for this because you are an architect who has set my mind on fire with architecture. And ever since then, architecture has hijacked part of my internal joy machine, and I thank you for that. So awesome. These scale models are partly you, Harley.
Thanks.
I got to go on vacation with my dear friend who's here tonight, Carrie Andrew Koppelman, and we just made art for days, and thankfully we had no Wi-Fi, and that was the joy of it. And I encourage you to unplug in this very plugged in era and make the art. Bad art, doesn't matter. You know, that will bring you joy. I'm trying new forms. I encourage you to try new forms. Scratchboard is something we think of as exclusively a child's thing, but that's okay. You know, you can use it as an adult. And so I'm playing with Scratchboard and just making, for the first time ever, birds, you know, and seeing where that goes. I'm playing with digital collage. If you miss traveling, as many of you do, Mary Schaefer and Nancy, I know you're world travelers. You would be traveling at this time of year. So you can bring memory to bear, longing to bear. We are yearning creatures, and you can put your yearning into your artwork. And really, this is the ultimate reason why we need art, is that we know how to use art as a tool for mental health and a way to navigate our feelings. You know, you can bring your feelings to the camera. Like they say about writing, the blank page is a safe space, right? It's a place to download your feelings and your emotions and write it out. So is the camera. The camera is a safe place to bring your feelings. So if you feel like this, that you're sort of grappling with being on the precipice of a barbed wire situation, and yet you also know your own internal resilience, show the complexity of that story to yourself, the paradox, the bittersweetness of life to yourself through your art practice. And I want to say something here about loss and grief. I know a lot of you are grieving, and I want to point out that even that can be an art form, and I'm going to read you a poem and see if you can sit with this for a while here. It's called One Art by Elizabeth Bishop. The art of losing isn't hard to master. So many things seem filled with the intent to be lost that they're lost is no disaster. Do something every day. Accept the fluster of lost door keys, the hour badly spent. The art of losing isn't hard to master. Then practice losing farther, losing faster, places and names, and where it was you meant to travel. None of these will bring disaster. I lost my mother's watch, and look, my last or next to last of 3 loved houses went. The art of losing isn't hard to master. I lost 2 cities, lovely ones and vaster, some realms I owned, 2 rivers, a continent. I missed them, but it wasn't a disaster. Even losing you, the joking voice, a gesture I love, I shan't have lied. It's evident, the art of losing's not too hard to master, though it may look like, write it, like disaster. I want to emphasize, write it. She's giving us a directive here. She's saying, we don't have a choice but to deal with loss. That is our lot as living creatures. But we do have a choice about how we cope with it. And she puts in parentheses here a prescription. She says, write it out. And what she means by that is sing it out, dance it out, talk it out, play it out, make art with your loss. Denying it, not so effective, it turns out. Turning your loss into an art form. That's sort of the grappling that art can do for us and with us. So if you feel like this, right? Let's see that. People can relate. You know, you might be stuck between a rock and a hard place. You can thrive there. We see that other creatures on the planet do so. We can take heart from that. I asked my fellow photographers, you know, show me how you are making art in your kitchens with whatever you had. And my art community bombarded me with creativity and humor. This is Carol Thomas showing me how she felt early on in the pandemic. Can anyone relate? So yes, we use, I mean, this, you know, you can start out with horror and transform it to humor using art, right? And we also know how to express not just grief and loss through art, but also ecstasy and elation, because that still exists despite all the grief we're contending with. This was a memorial for my friend's mother. We did a 15-minute meditation on her passing. And then I picked up the camera and I asked the camera to show me something about grief. And the camera, who I call Grace, made this image. I may have been there and I may have had a part in it, but really she did the heavy lifting. And so did the art muses, who, when we invite them into our lives, will play with us and meet us halfway somehow. I don't quite understand that, but there is an artistry that will meet us halfway if we are willing to go halfway. So sometimes we get what we need when we bring our feelings to the camera. We get transcendence. We get a reminder, oh yeah, the earth is deeply beautiful. And as much as the loss is painful, I'm grateful to be here. If you have the joy of being alive, which can be renewed at any moment through your art practice, you can show us that through your art making and access it. We don't need much as artists. One little spot of daffodils, 3 daffodils will do it. We need beauty, but not that much. And we can go a long way with a little bit of beauty. This is what our art practice can give us, right? Our art can smile back at us when we're not feeling like smiling, right? Which is why we call it a practice. Because art can transform ourselves and our spirits, we have a responsibility to lift the spirits of our friends and family, and we know how to do that. We have a role to serve here. Many of you recognize Edward Hopper. He's famous, beloved in the arts world. And this is the spoof that people have done about how we are now, you know, while we're sheltering in place. And many people have spoken about Edward Hopper as being, you know, a portrait of American solitude. And many of you are grappling with loneliness as another form of loss. I know this from having had conversations with you. And I want to note that we can help other people feel less lonely through our photographs. Early in the pandemic, this is Carrie Andrea Koppelman's beautiful child. And I could only do porch visits at the beginning because we were being cautious. And she was teaching me, she would pull her chair up at a safe distance and teach me how to read. And here she's looking at me like a librarian, checking to make sure, did I get the point about who would win in a contest between the polar bear and the grizzly bear? I love how studious she is here. And so I take this image of her as a love letter, right? As a way of saying, I can't hug you physically, but I can give you the equivalent in a portrait. And the flowers in the background, the red, the blue, the yellow, this is my way of hugging the person I can't really hug. And you can all do this for your friends and family. When I got to join the bubble, thankfully, you know, every portrait I take of her, I want to be as present as possible. And I want to offer up a portrait of her as an offering of joy and connection to her future self. When she looks back at this, she will know she was loved, and to her mother and to all of her extended family who need to feel that visual hug through our artistry. Here's a fun thing you can do with lunapic.com. You can animate an image. You know, I want this time to be a time of remembered joy, even though there was hardship. You could argue one of the things we do as adults is pretend to children that there is less hardship than there is. And in that pretending, sometimes we manufacture our own joy and pass it along. Here's a portrait of Carrie Andrea. I want to take a portrait of my friend the way she sees herself. She loves trees. And she has that beautiful red hair. And so she fits with the redwoods in this way. And I want to show her in dappled light in a place where she is full of happiness in a treehouse. So every time I take a portrait of someone I care about, it is with love. And I want them to feel that love in the photograph. CA, do you feel it? She's muted, but I hope the answer is yes. Here she is bounding down the stairs with a tintype app, which is quite fun. Here is our dear friend John Jackson, who is with us today at his retirement party. You know, when we have these moments to celebrate, we as artists know how to offer up celebration through our art practice and say, yes, this is a moment to savor. John, you're the picture of joy here. Art making is also a way to say thank you, right? When we receive something that is supportive to us, we can use our art practice to really receive it. When I was flying back here from New Zealand, and it was a 30-hour flight, and I was a little bit nervous because we were going to shelter in place that night, and I wasn't sure how that was going to go and whether supplies would be available. I was a little bit anxious, and I arrived at my home to find boxes and bags in front of my door, packed. Holly Wallace, who was here tonight, arranged for the arts community to deliver everything I would need to quarantine for 2 weeks. The arts community not only has shown up for me spiritually, creatively, but also practically and provided for me. And we can do that for each other. Arts, they also give us community. And by photographing what I received, I'm spending time to really receive it and say thank you for this and to give it back and to notice that I have received it and therefore I can give. These are beautiful flowers from my Aunt Sandy, who is here tonight. And again, as a way of receiving that gift of her dropping off flowers to me and the many gifts she's brought me and her presence here tonight, this is my way of saying thank you, to really take it in. So if your art practice can help heighten your gratitude practice, please consider that the two are intertwined. Nancy Rubin, good God. Nancy's here tonight. She's a teacher of many years, beloved. Every time we walk around town, people stop us and say, oh, Nancy, you are my favorite teacher ever. And you can see why, because she has the capacity to take this kind of loving portrait of a person. This is her neighbor, Ava, and during the time of sheltering in place, Nancy took a safely distant portrait of her really thriving in her own imaginative space. What a gorgeous gift to give to her neighbor. And she took it upon herself to exchange letters every day with Eva while she was sheltering in place, where she asked her questions. She essentially homeschooled her and not only wrote each of these letters back and forth to help her with literacy, but hung them up in a display that connected their two homes and hung them up with colorful pins. If this is not a high act of neighborliness, I don't know what is. You know, this is the way we use the arts to lift up our neighbors and to help people feel connected when they're feeling disconnected. I find this to be beautiful, Nancy. Thank you for this. This is a tribute to you, Nancy, to the way you continue to give through your artistry. And Bob Sturm, who is here tonight. You know, many of you can't be with your grandkids, which is hard. I know that's hard. And yet you're finding ways to be with your grandkids. Bob, you took these photographs offline from social media that your child posted, and you turned them into Photoshop. You desaturated them and turned them into this image, which then Bob sent them to his grandkids as a coloring book so that they could color them in and use portraits of themselves from their grandparent to be drawn into the arts. What an incredible gift.
You.
Oh, amazing.
Thank you.
Ron gave a nightly show for his entire neighborhood. This is the indoor. He and his wife are talented artists. He figured out how to rig a projector into his home so that every night he's projecting a slideshow of their artwork onto the neighbors. Here's the neighbor talking to his wife, who's the sculptor of this piece. And this is a way to offer up beauty to your neighborhood and inspiration. And that's what artists are doing right now, whether or not we are getting paid. We do this regardless. And we also keep local businesses in business because that's important for us. I am working with Walden Pond Books. I learned how to do book folding during the pandemic. Never thought I would be doing that, but here we are learning all manner of new things. I took this book by Gore Vidal, which is about a pandemic, and I turned it into a story of love. And I gave this book to Walden Pond Books so that they can sell my origami books and use the arts to draw some attention to the fact that they are still in business and you can still buy books from them. So one question for you all is, how can you use your art practice to support local businesses so they thrive? And finally, I want to note, we have a role as artists in lifting the collective spirit. I'm very lucky to co-curate an exhibit, which I started hustling on very quickly when I got back in the country. I'm working with Jean Dominique, and we have selected the work of 39 artists to show how people are using their artistry to thrive in place. And I invite you to take a look at this exhibit, which will be up the 1st through the 3rd. You can schedule appointments to see it safely distanced, and there will be an online version as well. And look at how people are thriving here, right? Is this what you guys are doing at your home, right? You know, but regardless of where you live, how you live, you know, the arts are going to make us sparkle and scintillate in place, right? Of any age. Look at the joy there. She's radiating joy. These are a few excerpts of what will be in the exhibit. This is Selena Lee, you know, showing us the beauty of daydreaming. Artists are so good at daydreaming, and we use that to renew our imaginations. Look at the clouds passing through the mask and the way that the mind is growing. This is Selena here in a fairly apocalyptic Dolores Park sky, painting and thriving through her artwork. This could be any of us. I have lent my own artistry to the Black Lives Matter as a way to lift up my students and my community, Black Lives Matter movement. This was a protest that 2 19-year-olds organized in a 24-hour period, and they got about 20,000 students out. For many of my students, it was their first protest ever, and they are fired up, and the baton of the civil rights movement has been effectively passed. I want to show you a few of my images from the Black Lives Matter movement, because once again, I think we as artists are responsible for using our art to lift up our community. So this was part of the curfew protest in Oakland. We broke the curfew in 3 hours with 15,000 of our neighbors. I wanted to show every sector of society showing up to support the Black Lives Matter movement. So the Muslim community, the Jewish community, the Asian community, Latino community, children, elders, people of all ages, interracial couples, women, everybody, doctors, nurses, standing up for the same message. These aren't fabulous portraits, and that's okay. I was mostly worried about safety while I was there and my students' safety. But I wanted to capture some images that show the beauty of this kind of collective outcry. And the fact that, yes, Black people have always been in God mode, but white people have sometimes failed to notice that. We as artists can recognize the God mode of the Black community and lift that up. This is an Oakland saying here, we hella love justice. And we can pass that message down to our young people. You can take a look at a portfolio there if you'd like to. That led me to teach a social justice class, partly to keep Looking Glass photo camera alive and a thrive, right? We're lending our time as artists and teachers to keeping local businesses alive. And finally, I just want to note, art is how we connect to ourselves and each other. And it's about love, ultimately, love of self, love of each other. It's the way we give and receive. It's a pathway. And like joy, it's a renewable resource. So you can go into your art practice grumpy and come out fulfilled with your cup filled up. And I want to invite you to join me this Thursday and Saturday. I'm doing a 2-part workshop for the Lair. And this will be tomorrow night at 6 p.m. You're welcome to join in. I'm going to give you some assignments related to resilience and the Lair if you've been there, and if not, that's fine. You're welcome to join in too. And then Saturday, I'm going to give you some assignments tomorrow night that you can choose. You're going to get to produce at least one beautiful thing. And then on Saturday, we're going to look at those together and what artistry has come through you, inspired by what you saw tonight, hopefully. So I am going to stop sharing there. And hear from you all, whether you are finding ways to, well, first of all, if you have questions, rebuttals, tirades, and or if you are able to see in your own lives that your art making practice is a source of resilience for you. So thank
Becky,
you.
I always just find it so joyful to see what you've done and think about, I don't consider myself an artist, but I do a lot of sewing and crafting, and you know, I don't think of it as high art, but I do find it fulfilling.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I encourage you, Michelle, to not focus on the noun part of like, am I an artist, but on the verb part of, am I making art? Is art flowing through me? Do I feel like a flute where music is flowing through me? And I get to be the lucky instrument. You know, it doesn't have to be a willful or an identity thing even. And sometimes, you know, I hear people talking about, well, it's not good art, right? But it's prayer. Do we rank and sort prayers? No, we do not. The praying itself is what matters, right? It's the doing of it. So I encourage you to make whatever is coming through you with abandon.
Well, I don't know if you can see it there in the background, my peacock, that was the one big thing that I've done during the pandemic for a friend of mine that I have not finished yet.
Heck yes. Giving away your art is the best thing. You know, many people think that we want to see our art on museum walls, so some stranger will admire us. No, that is not what it's for. Art is to give to your friends, right? To give away, to lift other people up. So how many of you here are leaning into the arts and or inspired to lean deeper based on what you saw tonight? Okay, fabulous. I trust that it is a path that will meet us halfway when we take our steps on it. So
yeah, I'm reading the book about Leonardo da Vinci, which I've had for a long time. I've never gotten around to reading. It's very thick and very heavy, but I just am amazed at how interested he is in everything about life. And
yeah,
it's an inspiration, and you are too.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Before we sign off here, I would, maybe we could go around just briefly and say, what is like one new art practice we have dug into while we're here? Like, I learned to crochet. Did not know I could do that. Has anyone else learned a new art practice during this time? You can unmute yourself to kick in.
Making chocolate chip cookies.
Great, Harley.
I came a little late, so I apologize for that, but I wanted to tell you what I've been doing for the last 163 days. So starting with our lockdown, I've taken photographs of mine, including some mostly older photographs, and I send them out with a punny Valentine greeting every day to a group of friends, because I decided we needed love. So I sometimes get back punsters who are better than me, who come up with a better greeting. But the joy of it for me is going back to some of these old photographs. The memory is so keen when you just see the image, right? It brings back the whole experience. So I'm enjoying it. For me, it's a gift for myself.
Yes.
And to send out to my friends every day. I've been doing it for 163 days, like I said. Almost running out of photos, not sure what to do, but I have to take some more.
That's inspiring. You know, there was a New York Times article about how much serotonin people get when they receive a handmade art card in the mail. So mail out some serotonin, people. Who else wants to mention a new art practice they've been leaning into?
I played with the new app today on my walk. That was fun.
Heck yes, Nancy. Reviving yourself every day. Who else?
So my challenge is to take a pretty picture of a flower every day. And it actually is challenging, and that's kind of something that's important to me, is just some little challenge of try to do something right. And I've really enjoyed that. And before, pictures have just been more, oh, this is what happened today. It's a document. But now it's more like, I want something pretty.
Yes, right. We're searching for beauty, and we can give ourselves that. I have a vase here for a reason. And I love the everydayness of it. Make time every day for an art practice. I make a point to touch my camera every day, and I call my camera what I need from her. Her name is Grace. She gives me that when I reach for her. So you can call your art equipment what you need from them. Eli, I see that you have a creative headdress on here.
That's something new that we did, and I was trying to design. It was supposed to be a jellyfish, but what can you do? In any case, more fun designing it than anything.
Yes, and you have a fabulous access to play, which is partly why your artwork is so strong. You play well. I encourage you to make utter fools out of ourselves as we play. We have a right for that. It's not just the dominion of children. So anybody else want to kick in what you've been doing here before we part ways?
Yes, I've been cooking and sharing my food with people, and growing so much with the cooking. It's been really indulgent. I'm photographing it in this really lovely place in my kitchen by the window. And I post that, and I hope that it cheers people up.
I'm sure it does, Laura. They say food is love, for sure, for a social species like us, indeed. John, I see you nodding your head. I'm going to encourage you to lean into videography. If you have in the back of your mind, I might someday like to do this art practice. Blunder in foolishly and enthusiastically, folks. How many of you might like to join us tomorrow night, for a little workshop?
Yeah.
Okay, Kathy, do you want to explain other programs?
Yeah, I think all of the information we can send it out again, but it's basically, we have a couple workouts ahead and a wine tasting on Friday night and Pete's coffee tasting Saturday morning. So yeah, join us. If you're curious about any of it, you can email us at lair@alumni.berkeley.edu. And of course, there's Becky's two art making classes that are ahead. So we're excited for all of these activities, and everyone's invited. Spread the word, tell friends, join us.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting us, Kathy.
Thank you for doing.
Let's give each other some, maybe we'll take a class portrait. Nancy, could you take our portrait, since you have taken portraits at the Lair forever? Let's all make a gesture, like send each other a little love here, and then Nancy will take our class portrait with a screenshot. Oh, you have your hands full of love and overflowing, CA, I see that. Sue, yeah, I knew you're like in it. Oh, thank you. You guys, I wish that your cups would be filled up to overflowing with your art practice, and I look forward to seeing what your creativity brings you and others. So thank you for your time and attention tonight. And
thank you, Becky. That was wonderful.
Thank you, Becky.
Wonderful. Wishing you all deep resilience.
Thank you. Women's Wellness 2021.
Absolutely, yay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Be well. Yay. Bye, Mary. Thank you for coming. John, so cute. Oh, Holly, are you still here?
I am.
Hi, Holly.
Hi. I lost my screen. I'm trying to figure out how to get it back, but I can hear you.
For joining us.
Glad you can make it. Did you see Judy Smith here?
I didn't see her.
I didn't see her either. Oh, well, too bad. I sent her the link, but maybe she didn't catch it on time.
Well, I wrote to her right before I wrote to you, and she was planning on doing it.
And I thought I saw her early on, but we'll see. Maybe we'll check in and see if there's a technical glitch.
Yes. I was trying to get on when